being actively engaged, participating, asking good questions, and ultimately leaving people and spaces better than how you found them. Finally, there's consequences if these expectations are not met and they also align with the schools. Here I have a flowchart of what a model program curriculum might look like in my ag program. At the core of it, the freshmen would need to take that base rudimentary ag science class, which gives them that broad knowledge of what ag is. From there, they have the option of going into 4 different pathways: animal science, plant science, agriculture mechanics, and environment and natural resources. At the bottom, you'll see 3 classes. These would be electives that students can opt into. Taking a little bit of a deeper dive into the environment and natural resource pathway specifically, here is the forestry class, which that would be taken ideally as a junior. This is 8 units of instruction that would be taught in the 36-week course in this forestry class. And these units of instruction, most importantly, are building off of the knowledge and skills learned in the environment and natural resource course. And they are best setting students up for success for the sustainable ag course, which are the courses that go before the forestry course and then the one that comes after. For those that aren't aware, Ag Ed is a 3-circle model. This means that in order to be an Ag Ed program and to have effective agriculture education, you need to have 3 different things: classroom instruction, supervised agricultural experience, and finally, FFA leadership. In my ideal program, I want to be intentional about how I integrate lab. This means that, as I mentioned in my philosophy, I want good hands-on practical labs where students are able to get in there, get their hands dirty, and really experience what we're talking about and practice those skills. I think addressing the why of what we're doing is vital to student success as well. So making sure I'm incorporating career applicable topics and skills that answer that question that every student has had about: why are we learning this? Why are we doing what we're doing? When am I ever going to use this in my life? Finally, because of how broad agriculture is, I really want to connect these different sectors that are in ag, specifically sectors that might be slightly unconventional. I would do this through interdisciplinary works and projects. So for example, I have made a cap bed from PVC and flannel fabric. It's a quick, relatively easy $15 project, but the most important thing about this is that it's taking knowledge about animal husbandry from an animal science class and the skills of the skills used from a plumbing class with working with PVC, and it connects these 2 together. 2 classes that you don't think necessarily would go together, but we're able to use the knowledge and skills from both to create this. On the screen, you will see that it is CAT tested and CAT approved, courtesy of my cat Gus. Next, I want to be intentional about how I integrate SAE. SAE is that supervised agricultural experience, and it's that chance for students to apply what they've learned in the classroom to a career pathway outside of the classroom that they're interested in. For my SAE integration, I want to model it after SAE for All, which is a national Ag Ed initiative, focusing on just because students may not have the resources at home, they can still have a meaningful SAE project, whether that's using community resources, local businesses, and even the school itself. In order to help my students have these really great SAEs, I would implement an SAE Friday, which would be every other week, where students have some class time to work on those SAEs. Finally, meaningfully integrating FFA into my classroom is that last step in making sure that I have a great, complete Ag Ed program. CDEs and LDEs, or career development events and leadership development events, would be at the core of this. This is that chance for students to competitively test their knowledge at the local, state, and even national level. I think community engagement is also so important for an FFA program to make sure that they are showing the community who they are, what they're doing, inviting them into the classroom, and helping to educate. At the core of all this would be the values of service and leadership. And as an FFA advisor, I would be looking to model those qualities constantly throughout the FFA integration part. And then thus the students would start to model those as well. I mentioned community involvement. So I would like to take the time now to address specifically how I'd like to get the community involved. The first one is through community-based units. This is when you take a unit of instruction in your classroom and you meaningfully work the community into it in multiple ways. Sometimes it's one big project. And I had this idea of doing during a water unit for environment and natural resources, and having students manage riparian zones, which are maybe around the school, in the community, and then working in teams to document what they're doing, what is a riparian zone, why is it important, how are we working on them, and then sharing it out in sort of like video blogs, maybe like a YouTube channel, but something that educates the community and gets them involved with what they're doing. Also, I think it's so important to bring in guest speakers. I by no means am the expert, and I know that I don't know everything that there is. So having students get that perspective from a career expert and also give them a chance to ask the expert. Now, in order to have all these great things in a program, we need students in the program. So here's an example of a program recruitment video that my colleague Alyssa and I have created.
Beyond the classroom, we have opportunities in our FFA chapter as well as individual career exploration opportunities.
Our goal is to get you prepared for life after graduation, whatever that might be.
First, let's check out some of the cool classes that we have to offer.
If you really liked that video, the link to the full video is on that handout as well. So this brings me to the second part of my presentation, which is what experiential education opportunities have I engaged in to become a better agriculture educator? First, I'd like to highlight some key courses I've taken during my time here at Penn State. The first one is AEE 297, Science Literacy and Public Policy. This class focused on critical thinking skills and what makes good science, and most importantly, how do we then communicate it to the public? Next is Forestry 228, Chainsaw Safety, Maintenance, and Operation. This class gave me the hard skills of working with chainsaws, maintaining them, and felling trees, as well as the underlying theme of how do we properly manage a forest. It also gave me a lot of confidence in working with small gas engines and actually sparked a passion for working with small gas engines. Next is AEE 413, Program Planning and Instructional Development. This class really showed me what it means to be a teacher beyond teaching students and working with students. It, as I saw it a lot of times, is the other part of teaching. So how do we get funding for a program? How do we be a program that is recognized by the state? How does education as a whole work? All of these things I feel like are so important to me, especially as a young teacher, in better understanding my role and how I fit in the broader education system. Finally, I have on here a key assignment that has really stuck with me and really gave me a lot of knowledge and skills. And that's through AEE 311, the Program of Activities creation. Now, for those that don't know, a program of activities is a big document that an FFA chapter puts together at the beginning of the year. And it outlines everything that they're going to be doing throughout the year. I've never created a program of activities before, so doing this for 311 was my first time, and though I stumbled a lot, I do feel like I have a better grasp on it, and thus I'll be better able to advise my students in the future when they create these. Next, I'd like to talk about some certifications that I have obtained. The first one is the National Safe Tractor and Machinery Operation Program. I'm instructor certified in that. Beef Quality Assurance. I decided to take this certification because I don't have a lot of knowledge about production beef. So I thought this was a great opportunity to start to expand my knowledge and help me to learn more about this industry. And then finally, I have Google Educator Level 1 certification. As you can see, I'm coming to you all from a screen, and we are in an increasingly digital world. So I thought it was important for me to take this certification so that I could have some more tools in my tool belt and be better equipped to student teach in the spring, as well as be a more effective teacher. I've also engaged in some professional development. I attended the National Association of Agriculture Educators Convention a couple weeks back. Specifically, I was a part of the FAST Symposium, where pre-service teachers were able to get together. We did workshops, we learned a lot, and we were able to network with each other and others through NAAE. I am also a member of the Pennsylvania Association of Agricultural Educators. And then finally, I've attended National FFA Convention a couple of times where I've learned about the resources that National FFA has for both students and teachers. Next, I'd like to talk about an embedded course that I was able to take that has really changed my perspective on people and agriculture, and that is Teach Ag Belize. I took this course sophomore year, my spring semester, and for the weeks leading up to spring break, we learned all about Belizean agriculture, their culture, the country as a whole, and then we got to spend spring break in Belize learning firsthand about all that we had learned about previously in that semester. For those that don't know, Belize is a small Central American country about the size of Massachusetts. Now, in this small country, there are so many scales of agriculture, from citrus and banana farms that ship their products globally to medium-sized farms that ship across the nation and in more local communities. And finally, to sustenance farming of people who truly lived off the land and the indigenous agriculture that we saw with the Mayan people. Speaking of the indigenous Mayan people, we got to stay with them for 3 days. They welcomed us with open arms into their village. We ate meals with them, and we got to experience their culture firsthand. Belize taught me a lot about the global impact of agriculture, and this is something that I know I'm going to be taking into the classroom with me. I think it is so important for us to give students that perspective of where their food comes from, and that is increasingly becoming more and more globalized. In addition, I talked about the Mayan people, but besides the Mayan people, there is a whole mosaic of cultures that makes up Belize, and this gave me so much more perspective, and has made me feel like I am more equipped to work with students of diverse backgrounds. Another very impactful experience for me was being a counselor at Shavers Creek Outdoor School. Shavers Creek is an environmental education program that Penn State runs, and Outdoor School specifically it is a program where 5th grade classes come for a week and they stay in cabins in the woods with counselors such as myself, and you got to learn about nature while being in nature. I did outdoor school as a freshman, my first semester as a freshman actually, and it was at a point where I was still questioning if ag ed was for me. Outdoor school really hammered home that this profession is where I belong. Specifically, when I got to see my first aha moment that I was able to facilitate. I was working with this young boy and he was learning about soils, and something I said related back to a lesson we had did the day before, and his face lit up. He was so excited, and he was telling me about all these connections he was making, and he was really able to understand that content through this aha moment, and seeing that joy and excitement on his face brought me so much joy and excitement, and it really showed me that this is where I'm meant to be, and that I want to be able to facilitate these moments for students. Another experience that has been incredibly impactful for me has been working and riding at Windhaven Farm. Here, I've learned virtually all my knowledge that I have about equine science through both skills and practical knowledge, as well as learning a lot about ag business. It's also taught me some more personal lessons, such as patience, whether it be working with an animal who is more stubborn than myself, or working with younger students and helping them to try and understand a concept. It's taught me patience through and through. It's also taught me endurance. And as a horse girl, I'd be remiss if I didn't take the chance to say that I've fallen off plenty of times and I've gotten back in that saddle every time, both literally and metaphorically. Finally, courtesy of this handsome gelding on the screen here, his name is Guinness, and he has taught me one of the most important life lessons that I have learned through Windhaven, which is you can't take yourself too seriously. I've learned that sometimes you just have to laugh at yourself, you just have to let it roll off your shoulders, and that taking yourself too seriously all the time isn't going to be fun. This is another lesson that I want to bring into the classroom and help my students to understand as well. Finally, I come to the most impactful experience that I've had during my undergrad, and that is working for student orientation and transition programs. I was a new student orientation leader for a little less than a year, and then I went on to be the student staff coordinator, which is basically the manager of the orientation team. I could talk for 3 hours about all the skills that I've learned through this job, but I'm going to condense it to just 3 bullet points. The first one is adaptability. During NSO, adaptability came in the form of a building's under construction and we need to go to a new classroom for the next session. Adaptability also came as we have a 2-day completely in-person program where we see about 12,000 people in any given summer, and we now need to make it completely virtual. Oh, and we have 3 months to do so. NSO taught me that you can't get worked up when something goes wrong and that you need to evaluate the situation, think about what you're going to do, and move on and implement that new solution, and that there's no use in dwelling on what went wrong. What's most important is that you learn from it and that you continue. I've also learned about communication and people skills. During NSO, we had hard conversations with students about responsible decision-making on campus, sexual assaults on campus, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the role that we all play in that. These conversations were not easy by any means. And through having these conversations, it has better taught me how to effectively reach an audience, how to meet people where they're at, how to navigate these trickier topics that are hard but so important to talk about. I've also learned so many people skills. We worked with a lot of parents and families and a lot of students who were feeling any and every emotion that you could possibly think about. I know in the classroom, I will also be working with parents and families and students who are feeling any and every emotion that you could possibly think about. And through working for SOTP, I feel better prepared to work with those different people. Finally, and most importantly, NSO taught me the need for inclusivity. I learned about so many people that were different than myself, whether it be they have different identities than what I have, or they have different backgrounds. But I gained so much knowledge and perspective about others, and it really showed me how I can do little things that are minuscule on my part that can make the space I occupy so much more inclusive for others. Specifically when it comes to welcoming language. And welcoming language is something that I have really taken to heart and that I now challenge myself daily in any interactions that I have, even with just the thoughts that I think and how I can make my language more welcoming. It has then inspired me to challenge those around me, such as my friends, my family, my cohort, whoever it may be. I know this will help me so much in the classroom in making sure that everyone feels like they have a seat at the table and that my classroom is a space where they are welcomed, they are valued, and that they are heard. Finally, I am coming to the last part of my presentation, which is how am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship opportunity? As Dr. Curry mentioned, I will be student teaching at Big Spring High School in January. It is located in Newville, Pennsylvania, which is about 2 hours south from here, State College. And my cooperating teacher is Sarah Beth Fulton, and I will also be working with Sharisa Naylor, the other ag teacher in the department. I'm very excited to get my hands on the facilities at Big Spring, and to highlight those facilities, they are 2 classrooms. There is a food science lab, a greenhouse with an accompanying head house, and finally a shop that has a small gas engine section, welding, a plasma cutter, woodworking, and more. Big Spring FFA has made themselves well known in the state association, and they are comprised of 220 affiliate members. They have three very strong CDEs that they compete in, and they are actually three of the CDEs that are near and dear to my heart because I competed in these when I was in high school. They are public speaking, employment skills, and ag issues. Big Spring also makes sure that their name is known in the community, and they are constantly doing things in their community and for their community, such as selling milkshakes at football games or participating in the Fountain Festival, which is a local festival in the summer in Newville. But they make sure that they are engaging their community with their chapter. Here are 4 strengths that have specifically stood out to me about Big Spring, and they are 4 of the main reasons why I have chosen Big Spring as my cooperating center. The first one, as you could tell from the last slide, is that they have a great FFA program there. Being from New Hampshire and coming to Penn State only knowing New Hampshire FFA, I was looking for a program that knew Pennsylvania FFA and that was actively engaged in it and that could help me better understand the state association. In addition, I value organization through and through, and from the moment I stepped foot at Big Spring High School, I knew that they also valued organization, a huge strength and one that is very important to me. Next, as I mentioned on the last slide, they are very active in their community. I'm very passionate about engaging community in what we're doing in ag and what we're doing in our ag programs. So having a program that also valued that and that can give me sort of a blueprint of when I have my own program, how can I then best engage the community in it? Finally, and most importantly, there are 2 incredible women running this program, and they are amazing educators and people, and I know they're going to make great role models for me as I embark on my journey into ag ed as a young teacher. For student teaching, here is what I am going to be responsible for and what I'm going to be teaching. I will be teaching in the Science of Animal Agriculture course, Fish and Wildlife, FFA Leadership, and Plant and Greenhouse Science. I always considered myself to be a big animal girl, but through unit and lesson planning and having a lot of plants on my own, I have discovered that I really love plant and greenhouse science, and I'm most excited actually for the soils unit. Though I am very, very, very green when it comes to lesson and unit planning, I've learned 4 things thus far that I would like to share. The first one is putting in the time and effort early on is going to be so worth it when it comes to unit and lesson planning and making sure that I have my stuff together and that things are organized and flowing. Next, making sure I am goal-centered. It sounds self-explanatory, but until I had someone explicitly tell me this, I was being so inefficient and unorganized in how I plan. There should be a flow to what I'm doing. If I don't understand the flow and how things connect, how am I supposed to expect the students to understand the flow and how things connect? Finally, making sure the format of these documents I'm creating is something that works best for me is so important to making sure that I am organized and that I can find information when I need to find it. If you're interested in looking, I have a sample of a unit plan and a sample of a lesson plan also in that handout. I believe I bring 5 main strengths to the table for student teaching and for the ag ed community in general. I'm an effective communicator. I mentioned this when I talked about NSO and the skills I've learned from NSO, but I believe I have the skills to reach people where they are, to adapt what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, to more effectively communicate with an audience, and to overall be a good listener, which ties directly into being then an effective communicator. I'm compassionate. I'm in this field because I love people and I want to help. I had an incredible ag teacher who guided me through my 2 years in ag ed, and she showed me love and compassion and is truly a second mom to me, and I want to be that person for students. I'm a lifelong learner. I know I don't know everything, and I love learning new things. So going into teaching, I know I'm going to be teaching students, but that the students are also going to be teaching me a lot too. I am an adventure seeker through and through. I think my parents know this a little bit too well, but my favorite phrase is, let's go on an adventure. I see this as I love to challenge myself, to explore the unknown, to venture into something that may seem a little scary, but why not try it? I think this is a great quality to have and another one that I want to role model for my students. Finally, I love exploring different viewpoints. I think it is so important to, again, push your comfort zone, as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, and to see what others are thinking, to try to put yourself in their shoes and get a broader perspective. Going into student teaching, I have 4 main personal and professional goals. The first one is to improve on my variability in my lessons and units. As I'm working through my unit and lesson plans, I've been getting very worried that things might get a little stagnant and that I'm just repeating things. So I really want to focus on my variability. Next, I want to gain more content and knowledge skills. I know I'm never going to know everything, but I want to gain as much knowledge as I can about agriculture and about people and about everything that this industry encompasses. As I've mentioned before, I think that networking with others is so important to being a professional and to also having an effective program. So I want to grow my network with other ag teachers as well as other community partners. Finally, we come to the age-old question of how do we balance work and home life? So that is another goal that I have. I'm just about done here today for my final presentation, but before I go, I want to leave you with a sentiment from one of my favorite people on the face of the earth, my mama, Lori Bentz. This sentiment came at a time when I was having a rough go of it this semester. I called her and I said, "Mama, it's just so hard. I don't know if I can do it." And she goes, "I know, but hard things are not bad things." And this one sentence, this one quote from her has completely changed my perspective in that just because it's hard doesn't mean it's bad. There are a lot of hard things I'm going to be dealing with in life. I know student teaching is going to be hard. I know being a teacher is going to be hard, but it's going to be so rewarding and it's going to be so worth it. So I'm up for the challenge. Thank you all so much for listening today. I greatly appreciate you all being here, and I will now field any questions that you have.
Please join me in either physically or digitally applauding for Maddie. She did an awesome job. I think I speak for most of us here that you set a really high bar, Maddie. If you don't mind, if you could stop screen sharing, that way we have the nice Brady Bunch style. We're going to go to the questions portion of the presentation now. And so we're going to hopefully alternate between the faculty and staff questions and then the general audience questions. And so I would like to start us off by asking a question. Let me back up. The questions can be anything you want to ask Maddie. This is her opportunity to showcase all that she's learned. And so if it's about her student teaching internship or anything else that you want to learn about Maddie, that's fine. But hopefully applied to the sense of how she's actually utilized this time to get ready and be prepared. And so my question to you, Maddie, is can you speak to a theory of motivation or something that you've learned over these past 4 years that you hope to lean on in the spring semester towards motivating kids who, in a challenging time like COVID, and maybe some synchronous or some learning that's not necessarily face-to-face, how do you motivate those kids who are like, yeah, this is on Zoom and that's just not my thing, so I'm not really going to participate?
Yeah, absolutely. So what first comes to mind is a concept that we learned in AEE 311, which is fixed versus growth mindsets. This is the idea that a fixed mindset is one where you're going, I can't do that. I have these skills. This is all the skills that I'm going to have. That's it. There's no growth possible. It also comes when, if there's a challenge, a fixed mindset goes, this is hard. I can't do it. Or I'm not going to try to do it. Whereas a growth mindset focuses on, this may be hard, but I'm going to work through it. I'm going to try my best and I'm going to see what I can do. I think in a fixed versus a growth mindset, first and foremost, I want to model that for my students in showing that I have a growth mindset and that they should also work on adopting that growth mindset because it helps you to be more efficient. It helps you to be less in the dumps about things and ultimately gives them a little bit more motivation when they're thinking essentially more positively about what they're doing. As far as motivating students on Zoom, I think being real with them is going to be important in acknowledging the situation that we're in, that it's hard, it's challenging, it's difficult, but understanding that it's not forever, that we're going to get through this. This is just a short period of time, and we are going to make it as fun and engaging as possible. Awesome.
We have a couple in the chat box and we're going to switch back and forth. Mikey Riggs, who is a freshman in our program, 2020, help me with the math, 3, 4, I think, has asked, what is your biggest piece of advice to someone entering the major as a first-year student?
To a first-year student entering the major. I think it's going to be take the time to develop your why. I mentioned earlier in my presentation about how it took me going to outdoor school to really solidify why I'm here, why I'm in ag ed, why I want to do what I want to do. But even after that, there was plenty of times that I've doubted why I'm in the major. But because I took the time throughout my freshman, sophomore year, even well into my junior year, to continuously develop my why and understand my own motivation for being in this profession and being in that major, that helped drive me to work through the hard times, as I alluded to at the end of my presentation. So for a first-year student, taking that time to know your why and really commit it to memory.
If we could go back to the faculty panel, and I neglected to introduce our faculty panel, so maybe we can do that as we ask questions. Dr. John Ewing is with us, an associate professor in our department, teaches some of our upper level courses. Do you have a question for Maddie, Dr. Ewing?
Yeah, I actually have two. The first question, she may have just answered there, though I think that was a water bottle. Surely, Maddie, you've had your Dunkin' this morning, right?
I have not had my Dunkin'. I'm not letting myself have Dunkin' until after the presentation as like a
little
reward.
Little treat. I understand. Okay, well that one's out of the way now. So next question, but I was a little worried about today. So you mentioned AE 413 in your presentation, program planning and evaluation, and on the first day of class, you were teamed up or grouped up with someone else for a little bit of a leadership challenge, as we called it. And one of the things that you had to do was dig into FFA and SAE and classroom instruction, really the complete program. So I guess the question to you this morning is, has your belief or your understanding of the value of the complete program changed in any way, or yeah, I guess that's the way to ask it. Changed in any way over the course of your time at Penn State or even within the last semester?
So I know for sure coming into Penn State, I never really valued the power of the SAE component of agriculture education. I know we did SAE at my high school, but I never saw it as an equal part of this 3-circle model. I saw it more as, oh, it's just something to do. So I saw more of like a 2-circle model of classroom management and FFA. And even then, I guess coming into Penn State, I never really saw FFA as being integrated into classroom management, and surely not SAE being integrated into, or not classroom management, but the classroom portion. And the more knowledge I've gained throughout my undergrad, the more I understand how these parts work together. I think 311 specifically, I took that last fall as a junior. And that was the moment where I really explicitly saw it drawn out, how each of these components can work with each other. And then it was hammered home for me in 413 when we got to do a little bit more of a deeper dive into this to show me not just how they connect together, but how as a teacher, I can purposely integrate them into my overall program.
All right. I appreciate that.
Thank you. We're going to move on to some more questions that I'm getting in the chat box. And your fellow out-of-stater, Ms. Jenna Kibbe, asks, what do you anticipate being your biggest challenge during student teaching, and how are you going to overcome that with what you've learned so far? So the biggest challenge that I see is going to be classroom management.
I am very much so a people person, and I feel like I have gotten some really great skills from our teaching labs this semester in 413, and also from other outside of the classroom work that I've done, such as I mentioned my work with student orientation and transition programs, other jobs and customer service that I've had. But classroom management is definitely a concern, and making sure that I am effectively reaching students and that I am still a presence in the room, but I also want students to be comfortable, and finding that balance between being too stern and being too soft, and that sweet spot in the middle.
Awesome. Thank you. Jenna, by the way, is a rising senior in our program, so she'll be doing this next year. Our next question comes from Ms. Beth Matthew, one of our programs managers.
Hi, Maddie. Fantastic job. I'm excited to be working with you this spring as you do your student teaching and as you transition into New and Beginning as well. So my question is actually a situation that happened to one of our New and Beginning teachers. So I received a phone call the other day from one of our teachers who was a little upset. She had she's teaching remotely, had given a assignment to her students. And one of the students, who was one of her top students in her class, turned in the assignment, but also gave her a very strongly worded letter with the assignment, critiquing the assignment, how she was teaching, everything basically right down to the words that were coming out of her mouth. And she was very caught off guard by it. And so I'm asking you, how would you react to receiving something like that? Because you have a similar rapport with people that she would.
Yeah. So first and foremost, I know myself, and I know I would need to take a step back after receiving something like that. And I don't want to say cool off, but just take a couple of deep breaths and remove myself from the situation, and give myself some space before I respond. I think at the core of it is reflecting on myself and making sure that I'm the most effective teacher as I can be. And while I know I would be taken back by a letter like that at first, ultimately, it's talking about how I can be better. And depending on my rapport with the student, I think it would be a good idea to have a conversation with her, set up a Zoom meeting, and see where this is coming from, what has sparked this, and just engaging in that meaningful dialogue of how I can do better, maybe how she could do things differently in the classroom, and ultimately see what the root of that is.
Sorry there, I couldn't find the unmute button. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Matthew. Our next question comes from S. Loy, which I can only assume is Sam Loy, but I cannot confirm or deny based on the picture that I can't see. The question from S. Loy is, great job. What are some people who have helped you grow along your ag ed journey?
Great. Okay, so this is going to be a shocker, but first and foremost is my amazing parents. They have supported me both financially, emotionally, physically at times, and I do not know what I would do without their love and encouragement, even all the way from New Hampshire, as I've embarked on this journey. Second of all is my incredible ag teacher, Ann DeMarco, who is teaching at the Seacoast School of Technology in Southern New Hampshire. She was the first one to, well, not the first one, I have to give my grandmother credit for saying that I'd be a great teacher, but Miss DeMarco was one of the first people to say, I think ag ed is for you. And she was the one who told me, I know you want to be a vet. I know you think that this is the profession you want to go into, but I don't think it's for you. And that's a tough thing to say to someone, something that they love and they're excited about, to say, listen, I know this profession and I don't think it's right for you. And she was real with me, she was honest, and I still remember that sit-down conversation that we had my senior year of high school. It was the week after FFA convention, or National FFA convention, and she told me that I should think about pursuing ag ed. She has been a constant supporter and cheerleader, and is always there whenever I text her or when I'm home and I want to come and visit. And she is also an incredible role model for me to, be the next Miss DeMarco, but the Maddie version of Miss DeMarco. Finally, I want to talk about one of the most strong, incredible women that I know, Katie Motiki. She was my boss when I worked for Student Orientation and Transition Program, and she taught me what it means to be a strong personality and yet also someone who is so kind and compassionate and loving. She pushed me, she challenged me, she always expected me to do my very best, and she made me rise to that occasion on multiple times. She also saw the potential in me and knew when I wasn't doing my best, and was someone who would, give me that swift kick in the rear that I needed to do better. She is an incredible woman, and I owe a lot of my people skills to her and through my time working for SOTP.
Got a nice little heart react there. We're going to swing to Mr. Carson on the top for our next question from our faculty staff panel.
Hi, Maddie. Great presentation. So quick question for you. I have not lived in Pennsylvania for too long, but from what I've gathered from people that I've met, there is a growing interest in improving SAE instruction in agricultural classrooms. What tools has Penn State provided you, as well as the tools that you are bringing along from your job history that are going to help you during your student teaching experience effectively plan and evaluate SAE experiences?
Great question. I think one of the most important resources that I've been presented with is a thick packet about SAE for All, which outlines what this initiative is, and it has some real tangible things in there, such as actual activities that you can print out, scan, whatever you need to do to give to students. Not being as confident in the SAE realm, that I will say that this is also something that I'm continuing to work on and to develop and to further my knowledge in. But the SAE for All information is for sure at the forefront. I also know that I have a great network with the Center for Personal and Professional Development. So I do have them as a resource for a little more of the nuance of how exactly do I incorporate this thing. I also think broadening the perspective of SAE, I know that when I originally thought of SAE, I thought it was only like production. Like you can only do like beef production, livestock production, equine, whatever it may be. And that my scope was very limited. But from the work I've done throughout my undergrad, I really understand how it can be a lot more than that. And it doesn't have to just be, I'm working on a beef farm or I'm working at my horse barn. It can be, hey, there's this need in the community. Maybe I want to do community service. How do I best do that? And while I may not have the answer right away, that is something that I would definitely make sure I'm working with that student on and phrase it as, we're going to work on this together. We're going to learn about this together in order to help them find an SAE and to pursue an SAE that they're passionate about and that they truly care about and want to do better in.
Awesome. Katie, your NSO connection asks, is there something from either Zoom or in the in-person part of NSO that sticks out as a defining moment of something you're definitely going to never do again, or something you would absolutely do and replicate?
So something that I will definitely always be doing is welcoming language. I talked about that earlier in my presentation. We had different phrases, what to say and what not to say, really hammered home to us during our NSO training. And while at the time I didn't know why it was important or why it was needed, I really see now the value in that welcoming language. Another thing is acronyms. Acronyms are something that we were told to never use during NSO. See, I just use an acronym. But it's because when new students and families are here, they don't know what these acronyms are. So in order to make them feel less like, oh shoot, I have no idea what's going on here. I don't even know the acronym for this. Using the actual name of it first is very important. The other thing is the power and importance of getting people's names right. During NSO, another rule we had was never say, sorry, I'm just really bad with names. because what that does is it inadvertently tells a student that I'm not going to take the time to learn your name. Just a short anecdote about this. I was in a ballroom dancing class, and in said class, we rotate through partners frequently. And I had this one partner one time, and of course I asked him his name, like what his major is, and he told me his name was Max. A couple days later, we were in class again and we were partnered up again. And I go, I'm so sorry, what'd you say your name was? I completely forgot. And he goes, oh, it's Mehek. And I go, I thought the other day you said your name was Max. And he goes, oh, well, it's really hard for people to pronounce, so I just say my name is Max, so it's easier for them. And in that moment, I really understood why learning people's names and why learning their real names was so important. So I committed it to memory. I said it, I repeated it constantly. I was like, Mehek, Mehek, okay, I'm gonna get this. And the next class that we were partnered up, I go, Mehek, right? And this man almost teared up and he goes, that's amazing. Like no one's ever really like tried to remember my name like that. And it was truly one of those moments that has been so impactful for me and has shown me the value of, again, doing something so minuscule on my part, such as repeating this guy's name to making him feel more welcomed in a space.
That's such awesome advice, Maddie. And a little birdie told me that we might have a few acronyms in ag education. So I like that one, that maybe that's not a good thing to always use the acronyms when you got kids who don't know what the heck they are. We are running a little short on time. We're going to take two more. Mr. Seaman has a question. Mr. John Seaman, one of our programs managers, has one for you from the faculty staff panel.
Hi, Maddie. Excellent job. Which of the three circles out of the three-circle model that you referenced in your presentation do you feel the least confident about incorporating into a program, either student teaching or beyond? Why do you think that is, and how do you plan to overcome that challenge?
I think SAE is still going to be that circle that I'm struggling the most to incorporate. I think I struggle the most to incorporate it because my scope has been very limited on what I see SAE as for such a long time. So I'm relearning my own things as well as working on implementing this with students. Not to harp on what I've already talked about, but the SAE for All module, I definitely will be using that in order to overcome my lack of confidence with incorporating the SAE portion of Ag Ed into my program. I also have learned this semester especially that relying on my peers and other people in my professional network is so important, and that the collective knowledge that we bring in is going to be so much stronger than my own knowledge. So working with different people in the center, asking questions when I need help, and using the knowledge of my peers, specifically the people in my cohort, to help me, again, overcome that lack of knowledge and that lack of confidence.
We'll end you on a softball, Maddie. You have another question from Nina Coolidge, who is a freshman in our program. And she asks, what's your most favorite course that you're going to be teaching this spring, or maybe the one you're anticipating the most with the most excitement?
So I came into student teaching thinking that fish and wildlife would be my favorite course, because if you know me, I love nature. I love environment and natural resources. I'm so nerdy about being in the woods, specifically about trees. But through lesson and unit planning, I've discovered that I'm most excited for plant and greenhouse science. I have a lot of cool labs and hands-on activities, and I've always been super excited and passionate about science. So being able to tie in the science of plants and plant structures and how do these different components work together and give students these cool, interesting hands-on opportunities to practice those skills and to better learn those skills. Plant and greenhouse science is for sure the one I am most excited for.
That's awesome, Maddie. Sharice, I see you unmuted, and I see Sarah Beth is here as well. I would be remiss if we didn't give you guys an opportunity to at least say something, or maybe give Maddie a word of encouragement. I'll lead you guys an opportunity if you'd like to speak.
Yeah, sorry that we were jumping in and out there trying to balance this nice virtual teaching atmosphere, but great job, Maddie. We're really excited to have you join us here in the Ville. down in Newville. And I know our students are excited as well, probably just because they're tired of listening to us. But we have no doubt that you're going to do really good things, and we're excited to see what you bring to our program and what we can learn from each other. So great job, kid.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited as well. I'm hoping you can show us some cool technology things that we can do, because sometimes we just run out of ideas, and you're that younger generation, so you're probably way more tech savvy than the rest of us. So I am really looking forward to hopefully stealing some ideas from you that I can use in my classroom.
Absolutely.
Great job today, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, for being here this morning, sorry, and participating with Maddie this morning. That's for everybody. We have a packed house here today, certainly one that we would be impressed to have here in Ferguson, probably a little bit bigger because we have the ability to be more amenable to folks who are in the online environment. So I want to thank everyone for their time and their attention this morning. We do have a second part of the presentation that is behind closed doors, if you will, between the faculty and Maddie. And so if there's any other lingering questions, you can do that now. Otherwise, please join me in congratulating Maddie one last time. We thank you for your time, and we will see you, if you would like to, for our next presentation, which is, I'm loading up my presentation so I don't say it wrong. Michaela Smith will be presenting at 1 o'clock. And so if you're interested in joining us for that one, we'd love for you to be there as well.
Maddie, great job. I'm so proud of you. You did it.
Great job, Maddie. Love you.
Thank you, Graham.
Very nicely done, Maddie. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job, Maddie. I love you.
I love you too.